So we will see French Revolution. It is from the view of sociology, and it will be a little bit big lecture because French Revolution is a big topic, and I don't want to divide this video in two parts. I want to make it a single whole, so please be patient and bear with me. Okay, so the French Revolution, it emerged in 1789. French Revolution started from 1789, and it put an end of feudalism and created a new order of society. Feudalism, like owner of the land is the main part at the time. Land is the main currency for them. The people who have a land will be treated as a lord. So it put an end of feudalism and created a new order of a society. It put an end of feudalism and created a new order of society. Okay, and this revolution had a very far impact, which does not affect only French society or in Europe, but also to the far countries such as India. India was influenced by the ideas generated during this revolution. Even if you see ideas like liberty, fraternity and equality, which is now a part of the preamble of the Constitution of India, was taken from French Revolution, was taken from none other than French Revolution. The French society and the French society was actually divided into feudal estates. French society was divided into feudal estates. So the structure of feudal society comprised the three estates. Estates are defined as a system of stratification found in feudal European societies. It means, like I will elaborate it, where one section is distinguished based on the status, privileges and restriction according to that state. Society was divided as per the privileges, restrictions and status. I will mention this here. Divided as per the status, privileges and restrictions. So the three parts were three feudal estates were the first estates, the second estates and the third estates. Third estates were the poorer one. So what is the first estate, second estates and third estates? So first estate, it consisted of a clergy which was stratified into higher clergy such as cardinal, archbishops, bishops and abbots. They in this category, the first estate, they lived a life of luxury and gave very little attention to religion, though they were conduct religious activity, but they were very less attention to the religion. Some prefer the life of politics. They move to the life of politics to religion. In comparison with the higher clergy, the lower parish priests were overworked and poverty stricken. So I will explain this part. So first estate, they just understand the first estates were those one who lived a life of luxury and gave a very little attention to the religion, and some prefer the life of politics to religion, and the people were like clergy or bishops, archbishops. Okay, now the second states, it consisted of nobility. It consists of, whenever you get a term nobility, it comes from the second states. So the two kinds of nobles of the, there were two kinds of nobles, and it consisted of nobility, and within this there were two kinds of noble. First, nobles of the robe and the nobles of the sword. Nobles of the sword and nobles of robe. So nobles of sword, who were nobles of sword? Nobles of sword were big landlords. They were protectors of the people in principle, but in reality they led a life of parasite. Live of the hard work of the, they live on the hard work of the peasants. So nobles of the sword, they were big landlords, and they were protectors. Just pay attention here, like they were protectors of the people in principle, but in reality they led a life of a parasite, living off the hard work of the peasants. They can be compared, if you want to compare them, they can be compared with the erstwhile jamindars in India. And the nobles of the robe, who were the nobles of the robe? The nobles of the robe were nobles, but not by birth, but by title. Like suppose if you are studying today and you are in a poor family. Now after studying you get a job, or you cleared some civil servant exam, you became an IAS officer. So now you will called as the nobles of the robe. It was not by birth. So they were nobles not by birth but by title. They were the magistrates and judges. Some of them were progressive and liberal, as they moved in from third estate to second estate. See, they were progressive and liberal because they moved from third estate to second estate, because they know the problem of third estate. They were aware that they faced when they were in third state. They were a common citizen at that time. Now after studying and doing labor in their study, they came in this state, but earlier they were in the third state, so they know about the third state. Now the third state were comprised rest of the society and included the peasants, merchants, the artisans, and others. And the vast difference between the condition of the peasant and that of clergy and the nobility, there were vast difference. Like they were completely high level, they were rich, but they were poor. They third state were not engaged in taking any administrative decision. They were not involved in any kind of decision. Just order was given to them, they were following it. So peasants worked day night and overloaded with the various taxes. All over the taxes, maximum taxes were paid by the third state. Some of the taxes or no taxes was paid by the first and the second state. So peasants worked day and night, overloaded with the various taxes. The other two states used to exploit this third state and kept on pampering and flattering the king. Talve chatna in Hindi. So they used to do that kind of thing. They were just flattering the king, and whatever the work were there, they were just putting on the third states. Now the compared to the peasants, the condition of the middle class, they were known as bourgeoisie, and the merchants, bankers, lawyers, manufacturers, etc. was much better. It means in that third state, if you compare in that third state, compared to the peasants, the condition of the middle class, which is also known as bourgeois, I call it bourgeois, but actual pronunciation is as bourgeoisie. I googled it. Bourgeoisie, the merchants, bankers, lawyers, manufacturers, etc., was much better. As the French trade was improved enormously, this commercial class was rich and secure, but they did not have the social prestige as compared with the high prestige of the member of the first and second estates. These members were getting money, but they were not getting respect as of the first and second estates. They does not have the status as the first and second estate. Bourgeois had no power to influence the court of administration, and king paid very little attention to them. Thus gaining political power became a necessity for them. Gaining political power became the necessity for them. Take care, like these things are creating a spark as a French Revolution later. So thus gaining political power became a necessity for them. If you notice, the clergy and nobility were only 2% of the total population, but they owned 35% of the land. Just imagine, only 2% of the total population, but owning 35% of the land. The most dangerous figure is coming. The peasant who formed 80% of the population had only 30% of the land. See, 80% of their population, 2% was nobility and other were that apart from peasants, so those lands. So 30% were divided from among that 80% of the population. See, you can imagine how critical situation is this. The first two states pay very less attention or no taxes to the government, as I said, and peasants used to pay taxes to the church, feudal lord, income tax, poll tax, land tax to the state. Thus they were overburdened by the taxes. They were overburdened by the taxes. Later, France faces too many costly wars which ultimately made people of the France hungry, and people when went to their queen for bread, you can imagine she told that people, if you don't have a bread, eat cake. They don't have a bread, but she is telling to eat cake. So during 18th century, France entered into the age of reason. During 18th century, France entered into the age of reason and rationalism like other European countries. Some of the major philosophers whose idea influenced the French people were rationalists who believed that all true things could be proved by reason. Some of the thinkers were like Montesquieu, Locke, Rousseau. They came. Like Montesquieu in his book, Montesquieu, you will read a term in political science also. Montesquieu, the separation of power he was talking about. So Montesquieu in his book The Spirit of Law, The Spirit of Law, The Spirit of Law said that there should not be the concentration of authority such as executive, legislative and judiciary at one place. Let us suppose, like right now we are in democracy, so let us suppose Supreme Court, our Rajya Sabha, Lok Sabha and police, everything is centered to at one person. Let us suppose a king, or let us suppose a prime minister, everything is centered at one person. Now just imagine the situation, if anything's judgment will come, it will depend upon that one person. So if any wrong will happen, this person will save himself. So it will be a disaster for a country when executive, legislative and judiciary power held at one place. It was given by him. He believed in the theory of separation of powers and the liberty of individual. He actually believed in watertight arrangement. Watertight arrangement means legislative should not jump in the power of judiciary, judiciary should not jump in the power of legislative, and executive should not jump in the power of other party. He want the separation of power in a watertight arrangement, that no one should jump their power and enter into some another power. America also followed this thing, but everyone can check the power of each other in a manner like judiciary should not do anything wrong, legislative should not do anything wrong, executive should not do anything wrong, in this manner. Loki, an Englishman, advocated that he was an Englishman, Loki, and advocated that every individual has certain rights which cannot be taken by any authority. These rights were right to live, prosperity and freedom. He further said that ruler who take away these powers should be removed and new rulers should be replaced who would be able to protect these rights. Loki said the ruler who take away these powers, that is freedom, right to live, I will mention that who powers is like right to live, freedom, should be removed and new ruler should be replaced who would be able to protect these rights. Understand? Okay, that person should be given a power of right to live and freedom. If some ruler is snatching your power, just replace it and establish a new ruler who will give that power. Voltaire, he was a French philosopher, advocated religious toleration and freedom of speech. He also stood for the right of individuals, for freedom of speech and expression. Voltaire, he stands for the freedom of speech and expression. Rousseau, he is one of the most important philosopher. Rousseau, in his book The Social Contract, that people of the country should have the right to choose a sovereign. He believed that people can develop their personality best under a government which is of their own choice. He said that people can develop their personalities best only under a government which is of their own choice. Okay, and the French middlemen were deeply affected by such ideas of liberty and equality. When France was bankrupt, then after also third estate were ignored by the both. Just imagine, like when the France was bankrupt, like after this revolution, when the France was bankrupt, it went bankrupt, then also third estate was ignored. They did not give them a voting right as on one assembly. This led to the formation of National Assembly led by the middle class. National Assembly formation by the middle class. Now we are viewing to the revolution, ending of the revolution. So this lead to the formation of a national assembly led by the middle class and some liberal minded nobles, like some liberal minded nobles, as I have said that here, as I have said, nobles of Rob, they evolved from the third state. This noble of the Rob, they evolved from the third state, so they know the problem of third states. So they were also part of this formation of national emergency, and noble of the Rob were also with them. They took an oath to draw a new constitution of France in an indoor tennis court. Oath was taken in an indoor tennis court because the assembly where they wanted to take an oath, the ruling government did not allow them, so they went to the tennis court. They took an oath to draw a new constitution, This marked the beginning of French Revolution. Is popularly known as Oath of Tennis Court. This, where they all came together and take the oath, just marked the beginning of the French Revolution. This marked the beginning of the French Revolution and is popularly known as Oath of Tennis Court. And the 14th July 1789 is celebrated as the France Independence Day. 14th July 1789, France Independence Day. Okay. On this day, middle class leaders broke this ancient royal prison. This middle class broke the ancient royal prison. That this royal prison was a symbol of oppression for them and set its inmates free. Who were there inside, they made them free. The causes for this event were the shortage of food and dismissal of a popular minister called Necker. There was a popular minister Necker, they dismissed them. So there was the anger between the people, so they revolted against them. They broke the prison and inmates were free who were inside that prison. The mob rebelled against the ruling class, especially the king. Then declaration of rights of man by the Constituent Assembly came, comprising the member of third state and some liberal minded members of other two states. They guaranteed the freedom of speech. They came together, they guaranteed the freedom of speech, religion, and from arbitrary punishment. It abolished the special rights to the clergy and nobility. Whatever the rights were enjoying back the clergy and nobility, all were abolished. The king was no longer to rule by divine right, and several important social and economic changes were brought. Now the king was not like he is the god, he will rule it. Everything was abolished. Thus the ideas of liberty and equality put an end to the age of serfdom, despotism, and hereditary privileges found in the old feudal society. Later, that King Louis XVI was there. Louis XVI and Queen proved guilty of treason and beheaded in public. Later, King Louis XVI and his queen, who said, eat bread, or if you don't have a bread, eat cake. Louis XVI were beheaded in public as they found guilty for treason and beheaded in public, like they cheated with the country. The French Revolution ended with the overthrow of that directed by Napoleon Bonaparte. It was by the Napoleon Bonaparte. Here Napoleon Bonaparte rules came. So thus French Revolution changed the political structure of European society and replaced the age of feudalism by heralding the arrival of democracy. Later it caused social disorder and impacted on economic structure. A new class of power holders emerged, the bourgeois. Now the bourgeois has emerged as a new power. Now the new power came as a bourgeois has the power. Now the Industrial Revolution, it began from 1760 AD in England. So after this Industrial Revolution started. Here after the beheading of the Louis XVI ended. For Industrial Revolution, just move to my next video.